a foreigner in the Philippines.
Sa kabriton og iyang asawang bulanon,
magtiayon sa lalawigan sa Bohol.
ng isang dayuhan at ang kanyang asawang Pilipina.
7 taon ng mag-asawa sina Terence at Beth na nakatira ngayon sa lungsod ng Talibon, Bohol.
Don't forget to share and subscribe our YouTube channel.
As you can see, I'm having a little wry smile at the drama that is developing surrounding Alfred, as Beth always calls him, Alfred the German. Alfred the German arrived us. It reminds me of another popular anti-hero, whatever you would call him, was Alan the Canadian. And Alan the Canadian. So we had an unexpected visit when Alfred turned up. It was very similar to Alan the Canadian, who people love to hate. People still inquire about Alan the Canadian. And if you've been looking at the videos that we've been doing with Alfred, we're trying to help Alfred. And the irony is that when the thing first surfaced, we were on one channel as saying Alfred scammed and dumped, and then the story of how we'd done it. Of course, we haven't scammed Alfred or dumped him, because as you can see, we're still trying to help him. So lots and lots of advice, lots of comments. Gosh, some of you are really upset with Alfred, and the truth is that he's had something of a recognition that we all should be happy for. It didn't work out with Talia. We really don't need to go into that anymore. It just didn't work out. They both got, it was a reciprocal deal, a symbiotic relationship, wasn't it? That she came in and she was supported. She got a piece of land bought, which of course she will inherit. And she will inherit that land once poor old Alfred decides to go on to Alfred the German heaven, whenever that comes about. Look, I can be a little bit dark-humoured about that because of my age, okay? I always go to sleep and hope for tomorrow. So Alfred is doing something of the same thing, and Talia will be very well placed whenever that happens. Plus, she has the house that we built for her. We built her, albeit a simple house, but we built her a house in her family compound area, the little tiny barangay barrio village that she lives in, which of course she still owns. So, you know, Talia is doing okay. I think that the problem has been that she is having difficulty coming to terms with the breakup. At first, she seems like she was quite happy about it, and then there was some buyer's or seller's remorse. Anyway, Alfred called us, and this is a man who always said that he was adamant that he did not want to get married. It was completely out of the question. And let me explain a little bit, in a little bit more detail, will help you to understand his situation. A lot of people are quite jaded. They're saying, oh yeah, he's saying he doesn't know whether he's divorced. Believe me, if you have been in a situation where you have parted from a partner, in a marriage, and you've both gone your separate ways, especially if that special ways may be two completely different countries. It's quite possible to not know whether your partner has gone ahead with the divorce. And this is actually true. It's a fact. And so if you come out of that marriage saying never again, as many men do, and probably many women as well, especially if the women are comfortably off and not hurting for money, then as some friends of mine who I did a lot of work for in California, and the man very sadly died, and I was talking to his wife. This was an elderly couple, and she was, I think she was from the Bronx, I'm not quite sure, but from New York, and, and a hard-talking lady. And I said, so is it possible that you might find another partner? And she said, no, I'm not a poice and I'm not a nice. So she wasn't a nurse and she wasn't a purse. In other words, the money that she had was fine for her to live on. She had a nice house, she had it was a comfortable life that she had, and she had friends that she could rely on, and she was an extremely pleasant, funny lady, and I stayed friends with her until I left. So it's possible that people can actually not know. If they don't care, then they can not know. And Alfred was in that situation when we met him, and he was quite adamant. And apparently he told Talia that was the case. And that was one of the bones of contention between them, because Talia was very religious. She is very religious. She's very involved with her church, which actually is the church that we used to belong to. And Pastor Timio, who is my brother-in-law, Beth's brother, is the pastor at that church. So we know that she is heavily involved in there, and that is a huge part of her life, and understandably so. Alfred, on the other hand, was more, what shall we say, more on the intellect. You know, it's not real to me how people can live without an awareness of there being a creator in whatever form they decide that it is for them, but they do. And Alfred is, well, I have to admit that he's a hard-headed man. You know, sometimes I used to think that you'd need dynamite to move Alfred. But he wrote us a really nice letter, and he said that as a result of seeing some of the way that a family worked, that was with, and it's funny, the change in a person's life can be on something which is quite inconsequential for someone else onlooking, and yet it's really key to a very big realization and change of viewpoint in life for the person involved. And what did it for Alfred was he spent time with Marjorie, and Marjorie is a happily married woman, has 2 children. Sadly, she lost one of those children, and Alfred was on the fringe of knowing something about that pain. And then they celebrated the birthday of the other little boy, who is a dear little child, and very personable. And he got used to Alfred and bonded with him, and started to call him Lolo, which is grandfather. And nobody told the child to do that. And it was a turning point for Alfred. And Alfred began, right or wrong, we all make these decisions based on perceptions as they change. And I'm sure that we've all had those, So it's not a case of siding with one or the other. This is one of the tragedies, one of the extra tragedies of when a marriage breaks up, is that the marriage, as a couple, have friends that they know. They have friends and supporters. And those friends and supporters are then put into, not necessarily, but often feel that they've been put into this situation of having to choose sides. So you get this situation now, and people are either for Alfred or they're for Talia, which is a shame, because it shouldn't be that way. But anyway, he's now seeing things in a different way, and then he was introduced to someone that possibly could be a future relationship. Now, the jaded ones, the cynical ones of you, because the girl is 3 months pregnant, I think it was 3 months, Alfred had to look at the idea. He liked the woman very much, and he had to look at the idea of what the child would mean. Believe me, none of us know when our time is up. For instance, Alfred is 65. I'm 82 in a few weeks. 22nd of July, I'll be 82 years old. Now, if I was back in 65, would I have said, well, I'm at least okay until I'm 82? No, I didn't know. I didn't know what age I would live to. I still don't know, any more than any one of us knows, how long we have. And if we have any sense, we do what Clint Eastwood suggested in an interview with him. I see his answer was for people who are moving on in age, as he is. He's well into he may be 88 actually. And he was on the golf course, and his friend said to him, Clint, what's the secret? And he said, don't let their old man in. Meaning, as soon as you start, when you get on in some years, and you start behaving like an old man, guess what? Oh, you'll very quickly become an old man. So you don't let the old man in, and you keep going, and you get rid of phrases like, at my age, even though I'm guilty of having used that a few times myself, but you don't allow those kinds of phrases to come in and be part of your vocabulary. Don't do it. So Alfred has every right to at least think that he's going to live to 82. So if you think of the statistics for normal marriages between people who are of an equal age, then it's anybody's guess. Another friend of mine, Bob, always says, any day above ground is a good day, which I always thought that was a little bit dark, but yes, I can see it. So Alfred is he's now gone from being, in my mind, quite cynical, and he's saying, maybe I could enjoy that. Maybe I could have that. So one of the reasons that he didn't care about whether he was divorced or not was because he had no intention of marrying again, so it didn't matter. And the fact that it didn't matter was also reinforced by the fact that, being German, is going to cost him a lot of money and hassle. He has to have all of the papers translated into German. So it has to go away for translation, page after page after page of whatever it costs, and it's translated into German. Then that is submitted to the German embassy. We're just talking now about the divorce side of things, okay? And then once that's done, it has to come back, and that now it's all in German. So whatever language it was in before, it has to be translated into English, and then it can be submitted to the Philippine government. So it would be a big hassle. So now we are at that point where he has said, I'm prepared to do that. I'm prepared to do that. So if this woman who is 3 months pregnant decides that this is not for her, and she will make her own decisions, and they will be based on her own views, her own feelings, her own, whatever it is, that her own frame of reference, and Alfred will do the same. So there's no point in anybody else criticizing. Believe me, Beth and I came in for a lot of flack, a lot of criticism. How could we do it? How could you do this? How could you do that? When we talked about having a child of our own. And a lot of it, as is usually the case when people are being very judgmental, a lot of it was based on assumptions which were incorrect. And one of the assumptions was that if I died, I would leave my family in poverty. It actually took a subscriber that we'd never met to correct the person who said, how could you do that, leaving your wife in poverty? So wait a minute, Beth is not going to be left in poverty. She has a successful, moderately successful channel, which people are as happy to see her as they are to see me. In fact, probably a lot happier to see her than they'll see me. But she had no debts. She has a nice car. She has a truck that can be used for the dog end part of our lives. And the house, especially now, because we've remodeled the house, when the quarantine started, when we first we were very much chained, locked into the house. At that time they were much more strict, and so the going out was limited to certain days depending on your age. So I spent a lot of time at home, and I did a lot of work myself. Plus we gave a lot of work to James, who came in and did the kind of work that certainly I'm not up to anymore, putting 8x4 sheets of plywood up onto the ceiling and stuff like that. I'm not up for that now. So the house is remodeled. So a lot of people were making the assumption, and the assumption was wrong. Beth, even now, would be left with more than most. So we're not rich by any means, as most people say. Funny thing is, when trolls start on you, they use a double-sided coin which they flip, and depending on which side it falls, if it falls on, say, heads, then we're filthy rich, and we have no right to be filthy rich because we must have skimmed it off all of these poor people. See, so there's that to go. then if it falls on the other side, tails, then we're living in squalor, and our house is not a lovely house. It's just a shed, you know, and our pool is not a pool. It's just like a hole in the ground, you know. Well, you call that a pool? That's not a pool. 15 by 15 is not a pool. But when they're on the heads, it's an Olympic-size swimming pool, and worthy of the mansion that they are saying we live in. So, we're being, no matter what happens, we will be judged. We will be judged either for not helping Alfred or for helping him. A couple of people said, I used to watch your channel, but now that you're helping that guy, Alfred the German, I'm going to unsubscribe. And have to admit, my first thing was, oh no, don't do that. And then my second was, well, what the heck, you know, if you're not happy looking in on our feeble efforts to help a friend, what can we do? So the drama is there, and yes, it's pulling people in to look in on what the drama is. Here's an interesting fact. A little while ago, let me see, over 2 years ago, Beth and I were what I always call the flavour of the month. We were the flavour of the month for being attacked. And I didn't realise that there were so many expat sites out there, but someone actually had made a point of counting them, and said that there are about 10 or possibly 15 sites who are saying that you are going to prison. And I'm smiling about it now, but believe me, back then it was no fun. It wasn't fun for either of us, not for the entire family. And we had to find our inner resources. We prayed a lot. Beth can be a tough cookie on this at times. And she, when we came through it and finally got our registration and did all of the paperwork for our charity, she said what they didn't realize was that we had they were accusing us of having various hidden supporters who were powerful people, like Sarah Duterte. We were close buddies of Sarah Duterte. I don't think so. We flew to Davao, and we couldn't get past the secretary. So that's how close our friendship was with Sarah. And in fact, what was that popular joke, you know? We are the couple about who Sarah Duterte once said, who? Which sums it up a bit. So at that time, when it seemed like we were very likely to be going to prison or deportation, and there was all this drama, we showed it for what it was worth. We filmed opening the subpoena, which was bringing the case against us. We showed all of that, and we were gaining subscribers at the rate of over 1,000 every day. 1,000 new people every day. And that, I don't know how people, they say that you can buy subs, or you can buy likes. I don't know how that works. Swear to God, I don't know, and I'm not interested because they're not real. Those things are not real. How can you buy a subscriber? It's just not. It's not possible in my book. But we were actually gaining over 1,000 a day. So the drama worked. Not quite as much when Alan the Canadian came along. Alan the Canadian came along, and he had a child, he had a very young wife and a child, and he was, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think he was maybe even 2 years overstay, 2 years. And he came to us asking for the money to go home to Canada. Well, the way that it worked out was he had to go to Manila, very much like Alfred did. So he needed the money to go to Manila. Now, 2 fellow Canadians sent him the money through us. They sent us the money to give to Alfred so that he could buy the ticket. In fact, I think that what we did was we bought the ticket, showed the receipts, and gave him the ticket. So that was what we did there. And then another subscriber, in fact, Little Bit Rich, paid his ticket home. And everybody is operating on their own agenda. And as when people criticized Little Bit Rich for being foolish enough, was the common comment, for being foolish enough to believe this man, Little Bit Rich said, I would like to see the young woman with the child reunited with her family, which they were estranged because of her association with Alan the Canadian. So that got resolved after a fashion. He paid his penalties. They gave him a period of time within which he must buy a ticket and exit, and that's what he did. And we made sure that he got on that plane and got the heck out of here. Well, Alfred doesn't want to do that. He wants to stay, and he's now hoping that he will be able to have a relationship and possibly the joys of a young child that he can bond with as a father. Now, Beth and I have fostered. People are right. I use the term adopted. I use that term, but I've already said on previous occasions that, as in the case of Bibi and Taliklik, they are my unofficially adopted children. Unofficially adopted children. And then after that, it's a mouthful, so I just say my adopted daughters. And we had the same with Lovely, who is the little girl that you see with us all the time. She looks about 6 years old, but actually her next birthday will be 10. But she is what in the Philippines they call a malnourished child, which is more common than would ever hope should be the case. And she'd been malnourished, and she hasn't grown. She's absolutely the most perfect little girl you could wish for. Everything about her is perfect, and she's extremely intelligent, right? And quite precocious as well, I can tell you, right? So, but she actually is 9 going on 10. Well, we know what the haters are for trying to make trouble, so we thought ahead and we said, after Lovely had been with us for a few weeks, we knew that everybody adored her. Anywhere that Lovely is, you'll find people laughing. It's just one of those things. And so we had the services of a state registered social worker who prepared the paperwork, and we officially fostered. And we did that with the permission and agreement of the father. And I say the father, and what has now turned out to be the stepmom of Lovely. The stepmom, because about 2 years ago, I think it was, or a year ago, Lovely's mother died. And we had an extremely emotional meeting with her one day, just completely by accident. We saw her in the park in front of the municipal hall, and she spoke to, of course I was not privy to this conversation because it was in Visayan, but she said to Beth, if I die, will you take care of the children? Will you take care of my children? Now, we did have the older sister of Lovely at first, but the older sister, when her mother died, she became like the mother. And she was with us here, but she decided that she needed to be with her siblings. So she went home, at least for a while. So we made sure that we had the paperwork all sorted out. And the father is on good terms with us. All the paperwork was signed by the parents in front of witnesses and with the help of a qualified state-registered social worker. And we did that through the Village of Hope orphanage, who were able to oversee the whole thing. So we have a small child with us now, and the joys of that are evident to us. So we understand Alfred thinking the same. Now, there are people who we think are jaded or cynical, and think that shouldn't be so. And I'm sure that people thought that about us fostering Lovely. But we actually, a few weeks ago, we actually said to Lovely, we think you should go home for a few days. And she didn't want to do that even. And then something happened and she went home, and she had, I think, 2 or 3 days at home and was very, very glad to be back with us. And we were happy to have her. So things change, and that's what's changing for Alfred. So it's not a case of us siding with Alfred or siding with Talia. In truth, Beth and I thought that it would be best for Alfred and Talia if they could stay together. Because at that time, we didn't think that Alfred was going to change and start talking about being married and having a family. So we just saw him living on his own. And I actually said to Alfred, why don't you think of this in a new dynamic, that even if you cannot be romantically involved with Talia, why not continue with the relationship in-house as it has been going, with the pressure off the romantic side of things. We have a friend, Bill, who lives in Loon or Luong, and he has a housekeeper, and the housekeeper is live-in. They're good friends. There's nothing romantic between them. They came and visited us once, and we had lunch at Vidasto. And it works very well, that the woman is secure where she is. I take it that if anything happened to Bill, she would be well taken care of. And she cares very much. They care about each other in a different way. And I thought, and so did Beth, that Alfred could do that too. And he said no. And so now we've got this situation where people are not allowing him the right to make a choice about his own life, which of course, to my money, is wrong. We made up our minds right from the word go when we started to help in all of these situations of, we built a house once for a family who had 11 children. Believe me, we had many people who said, absolute disgrace, totally irresponsible. How did they even continue going after the second or third child when they could hardly support them? We didn't make that judgment. We looked at the children and we said, the children should have a house that will be safe, secure and weatherproof. No swimming pools and no hot tubs and no bowling alleys, just a simple, modest little house that they will be safe in. And that's what we've done with every house that we have built or remodeled or refinished. In any way, we look at the children and we help the children. And in order to do that, we cannot judge the parents, because sometimes the parents, the father can be a mess. Father can be someone who is heavily involved in gambling or even drugs, doing drugs. They won't admit that, but you can see the signs. So we don't judge. And so it's a little bit difficult for us now seeing Alfred being judged. And look at the comments. We're going to start deleting the nasty ones, because now that comments appear to be reinstated, we will start to monitor them ourselves. So that's the intention. So if you're out there putting nasty comments on our site, your time is limited. So let me close and say, let's hope that Alfred, let's hope that he finds happiness. Why would we not? And Talia, let's hope that Talia finds happiness too. Thanks for looking in, and bye for now.